Hey, before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to share with you a little SEO tip that's been working really well on one of my sites. In fact, it's owntheyard.com, my niche site project 4 site. I've been building internal links with that site. One thing that I like to do is find all the orphaned pages on the site, and so that are articles that don't have any links pointing to that. And so I'm using Link Whisper to just sort those pages by those that don't have any internal links or very few internal links. And it makes it very easy using Link Whisper in the reports to do that. And so I went ahead and I went through a bunch of those that didn't have any links, and I added 1 or 2 internal links to those articles. And I'm starting to see big movement in the rankings. And I've been keeping track. And in fact, it's been about 25 days since I built, for most of these, just 1 or 2 internal links. And I wanted to share some of those results. So one of these keywords, I was ranked number 32 in Google. I built 1 internal link. Now it's been, like I said, a little over 3 weeks later, and I now rank number 1 in Google for that particular keyword. Another one of these keywords, I built just 1 internal link to that page. I was ranking over 100. I now rank number 9 in Google. Another one, I was ranking number 21 in Google. I built just 1 internal link, and now I rank number 2 in Google. And again, this is all about 25 days later. And a couple of these others, I built 5 internal links to this particular keyword. I was ranking over 100, and now I rank number 1. Another one of these, I was ranked number 5 in Google, and I built 8 internal links, and now I rank number 1 in Google for that particular keyword. So I'm seeing huge impact without building external links to these particular pages. We do know that external links are important and can help a lot, but there's a ton that can be left on the table sometimes with internal links. And I've been using my WordPress plugin, which is called Link Whisper, to build internal links. It makes it really fast and easy to see a full report on your site, how many internal links each of your pages has, and then to build those internal links in a very fast and efficient and effective manner. I'm seeing big results by doing this on my own site. So I hope that you would consider checking out Link Whisper by going to linkwhisper.com. Thanks a lot. Hey everyone, it's Spencer Hawes here with nichepursuits.com, and welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. I've got another interview for you today, and it's with Kyle Roof from internetmarketing.gold and pageoptimizer.pro. Now, Kyle is a really smart SEO. He specializes in search engine optimization, and what I find really unique and what he shares during this interview is that he's all about doing your own SEO tests. In other words, he likes to see the data. He doesn't want to just read what other people are doing and how that may or may not be actually impacting search engine rankings that for Google. So how do you go about performing your own tests? If you want to know if I change the title or if it matters, if I remove all the images or add more images or do all sorts of minor tweaks on page on your site, how do you test that? And Kyle's going to run through the tests that he's done and how you can set up your own test. And one thing that I found really interesting is just that Kyle makes it very clear that Google is a robot. It needs to satisfy certain algorithms, certain things. It doesn't actually read and truly understands what's on your page, but it still looks for things like keywords and images and other meta tags and alt tags and other things that it can, that a robot can understand what your page is truly about, where it should rank that page. And so we go through all sorts of things talking about on-page optimization. And of course, we talk about his tool, Page Optimizer Pro, which you can definitely check out. And just a lot of really good things that hopefully you can implement into your own sites to start seeing them rank better and generally just get some great motivation to do better in your business. So here is Kyle. Hey, Kyle, welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Definitely. It's good to have you on the podcast. Matt Diggity actually recommended that you come on. I just interviewed him a little while ago. And I know you guys have known each other for a long time. And I think you spoke at his conference in Chiang Mai, right?
Yeah, I'm here to say that Matt is a complete fraud, and anything he told you is untrue, including his recommendation of me.
You want to correct the record on that.
That's why I'm here, really.
Exactly. Right. We'll undo whatever damage he did on his interview.
That's actually my whole mission in life, is just to correct Matt's mistakes.
Just clean up his messes. Yeah.
I did speak in Chiang Mai just a couple months ago, and it was a fantastic conference. Like, if there's one, it's hard to beat going to Thailand just in general. And then to have a conference, I think there were 800 people there. It was massive. And just people, what's really nice is to be with like-minded people, because you don't have to explain your job. You know, like when you're in the hallway, like, what do you do? Like, well, I do this. Like, everyone's like, oh yeah, of course. And then instead of like, what is that again?
Right. It's not like talking to family members that have no idea, what
I explained to my mom
is.
about 37 times what I do. And at this point, I just I'll tell her it's computers. It's computers, Mom.
Right. If you got a computer problem, call you, right? That's what I love. Yes. So I would like to give our listeners a little bit of your background. So can you kind of give us some of your work experience, business experience previous to building online businesses? Kind of, how did you get your feet wet?
Sure. Well, I was actually a lawyer in a previous life. I was a trial attorney, and I really did not like that. So I took a year off and moved to South Korea, and which is, I think, a normal path for most people. And that 1 year off turned into 5 years living in South Korea. And while I was there, I got into web design and development. And then that transitioned into getting recurring income through digital marketing and SEO. And then kind of some twists and turns. But then that's how I landed on the agency that I have now, that I co-founded with Andrew Steven, my business partner. And that process, kind of cleansing myself from being a lawyer and then into something that I actually really enjoyed doing, into digital marketing. And then from there, that's like where Page Optimizer Pro came from. Right. Was the work that we're doing in the agency spawned that tool, and that from those processes, it kind of turned into the tool.
Right. So I'm sure there's, a huge backstory to, becoming a trial attorney and deciding not to be a trial attorney, et cetera. But why did you choose to go to South Korea? What was the draw there?
Well, so my wife is also a trial attorney, and we met in law school, and she was also burnt out. And she said, wouldn't it be hilarious if we moved to Europe and taught English for a year, just kind of as a whim? And I was like, that would be hilarious. And then I was like, let's do it. And that was actually the plan, was just, we're working 80-hour weeks and completely burned out. And I was like, it would just be really hilarious to work a 9 to 5 kind of job and teach English in some random place and travel. That was the biggest thing, was to travel, which we were able to do, which was great, because you can't do that as a lawyer. You can't, or most jobs, you can't just take up and go.
Right. So you purposely kind of took a break from, being a trial attorney to kind of figure out what your next thing was. Was that kind of the idea? It's like, hey, let's travel, let's make a little bit of money to live for a year or two, and then let's figure it out later.
That's exactly it. And I actually thought I would always go back to law, and every once in a while, it's a nice backup plan. Right. Worst case scenario, I can go be a lawyer. It's nice to have in my pocket.
Fortunately, you haven't had to do that quite yet. And so it sounds like sort of the first online business that you created was web design, right? That has led to, doing more SEO and client work, of course.
Yeah, I started a business in South Korea, and it required a pretty technical website, and it took a lot of time to find developers that could actually do it. And then once I had assembled this team, I was like, I've got a pretty cracked team of developers here. I bet I could subcontract web design and development.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I got into it. And then I started doing that, and that actually went pretty well. Things went off the rails when, so I brought my brother into the company, and he does web design and development. And we had these contractors, and they were all in different places in India. And I told my brother, I was like, here's what we need to do. We need to go to India, open a company there. We can bring people in, and it'll be more cost effective, and we can get more work out of them because they're not freelancing. They're our employees.
Right.
So we did that. And my brother was in India. I was in the US, and I was about to fly out, and we were told we were going to get a shakedown from the police, because that's just kind of how it goes. And we did. And the police knocked on the door. My brother was there. He opened the door, and they're like, we need to see your papers. your business papers. And so he shows them the papers and they're like, these are the wrong papers. And he's like, I promise they're the right ones. And they're like, no, they're wrong. And so we had cash on hand for this. And instead of asking for a bribe, they put him in handcuffs and threw him in jail.
Wow. And
so then he's talking to he gets brought in front of the chief of police, and the chief of police is like, well, these could be the right papers. I don't know. You have two choices. You can leave town tomorrow, or you can sit in jail and wait for the magistrate to come, and the magistrate will sort it out. And my brother was like, well, when does the magistrate come? And the chief of police was like, I don't know. So my brother goes, I think we'll leave town tomorrow.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So of course our employees don't want to be involved in it. They've scattered. After my brother left, we actually were friends with the neighbor next door. It was kind of like a business on the first floor, and then there are apartments or rooms on the second floor, and that's what we had. And they had the same building. And we become friends with them. And they said that basically the police came in and took all of our stuff, like all the computers, all the furniture, just everything. And then the landlord had a new tenant in 3 days later. So this was very coordinated. Also, you have to put a 6-month deposit down on your rent. And so we did not get our deposit back.
Ouch.
Yeah, that was not fun. But so we're hemorrhaging clients. And my brother, who does web design development, is like, well, I can take these 4. I can do these 4 projects. And we had just started doing SEO for recurring income. And we didn't have any SEO people, but we had SEO clients. And so that I could pay my own rent the next month, I had to learn SEO that day. And that's basically what I did, so that I could actually have clients and pay my own rent. I had to then learn the job that I had already tasked other people, and to keep those clients.
So where do you go to learn SEO in a day?
That's the thing. I've told this joke before, but you search online, is this a ranking factor? And you get 3 answers that say yes, 3 that say no, and 3 very learned answers that say maybe. And you realize that that's not the way to learn SEO. That's an impossible way to learn SEO. And what occurred to me is that people are running their own tests. That must be what they're doing. So I started putting up test sites to run real quick, because I was like, well, you can't test a client site. Mm-hmm. So that's what I started doing is running my own tests. And then it was 2015, I think, when I had my first public speaking opportunity. And I spoke on setting up SEO tests, and it was a room of very high level SEOs. And I assumed that's what they were doing. And I was just going to maybe give a couple insights or maybe a couple new twists. And then I realized that nobody is doing that. Nobody is running SEO tests. And they're really, I think a lot of it is just experience more so than anything, but they're not actually then going out and finding out what is. And that's when I realized, oh, I've got something here.
Right.
The people aren't doing these sorts of things, because setting up an SEO test is not easy. It's not fun. You'll make tons of mistakes. Most tests don't work. And then I realized that, oh, wow, the education that I got by doing these tests, I'm actually on to maybe a better way to do SEO. And then all the tests and all that's what goes into my agency. But then that's also then kind of the genesis of Pop as well, is based on those on-page tests, like what is a ranking factor and what isn't, and how can we evaluate that?
Yeah, it's a super interesting story of how you evolved to, not even being involved in SEO at all, to becoming an advanced SEO tester and coming out with tools that help, and having an agency. And I do want to talk about some of the tests here in a little bit that you've run and how to run tests, et cetera. But first, can you just sort of catch people up to what you are doing now in terms of, what is your business? Are you running some of your own sites? Are you only working with clients? You mentioned, Page Optimizer Pro. Give us a sense of your overall business and what's involved there.
The main source of my income is still my agency. So I'm in Phoenix. We have the office in Phoenix. We have an office in Berlin, which is our main office, and we have an office in Melbourne. The Melbourne office, we're actually an Australian company, but the Melbourne office is actually the least staffed of all the places. But Berlin is kind of our main location. We have about 80 clients doing local to national to international SEO, kind of everything in between. We have about 16 employees. It took me a while to realize what a real company was, and there are stages of real company. Well, when you start off and you've got 2 clients, I think that's a well-paying hobby. But when you get to the point that you're taking a salary, so, business fluctuations always happen where you have more clients, you have less clients. But when you're at a point where you can take a salary and it doesn't matter if you gained or lost a client that month, that's when I started to realize that I think we've got a company here. When people are working for you exclusively and not just a VA type person, but, somebody that this is, they're now considering this their job,
right.
Their vocation. So and then I think the next real step was, now we have insurance that if I were to die, the company actually gets money to replace me. So like you go through like stages of what might be a real company. And I think we're at the point that we actually have a real company. And that's liberating, because then that allows me to, I think, pursue other things that I've wanted to pursue. A lot of my focus is on POP, on Page Optimizer Pro, but we've actually then started acquiring digital properties. It was something that I've always thought about doing. Everybody thinks about doing affiliate, right?
Right.
But I had the agency, and that was so much of my time. I couldn't imagine running another website. But now that I've gotten the agency to a point that I can really step back a bit from, I'm not doing the day-to-day running of the company. I'm in strategy meetings, which is great. And so that, but somebody else is actually then doing that implementation. That's actually allowed me to get into, because people are always like, why aren't you doing your own sites? And it's like, I don't know. I don't have time. Who has time? Mm-hmm. But I'm building out an agency, and now I actually have the time. But I had a thought about affiliate in that I don't want to play somebody else's game, where I'm doing some form of an affiliate thing where I'm battling other affiliates. I'm battling Amazon, and I'm battling other things. And I'm pretty good at building software. And I realized that I can create small SaaS sites. And so that's actually what I've been doing for the last 6 months. Is I've built 2 more small SaaS sites. They're going to launch in a couple weeks. But kind of taking the idea of affiliate, where you can have properties that you own that are income properties, but doing something slightly differently. And I think this might be the next era of affiliate, is in small scale SaaS. The concept is solve one problem. Solve one problem that somebody would pay $20 a month for that problem to go away. So you're not building POP, you're not building out a massive tool, and it doesn't have to be in digital marketing. It can be anything. Combining 2 tools together, basically doing a glorified Zap. So something where somebody has a spreadsheet that they're dealing with, and if you could just do one thing, that would make their lives better. It could be industry specific, in law or in education or engineering or whatever. The idea is solve one problem that somebody's like, yep, here's $20. I don't want to do that anymore. And if you can get 100 people to pay you $20 a month, that's $2,000. It'll probably cost you $300 to $400 to run the site. And a $20 problem is probably between $5,000 to $10,000 to build. At the low end, you're ROI positive in 4 months. And then you've got an income property from there to go. And if it takes off, then that's great. If not, if it stays at that 100, that's fine. You're clearing $1,500 a month.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've been focusing on, is finding those types of opportunities. So I've got 2 that I like a lot. And that's what I see myself doing in terms of smaller properties that I own, is to get these things. The other thing too is I think a big thing is you need that. You don't advertise for that 100. You need to be able to tap into 100 people word of mouth. Basically you tell somebody and then they tell somebody, and people are like, yes, this is exactly what I need, without having to do like some massive marketing campaign to educate the market. If you need some way to tap into whatever that market is through word of mouth. And if you can do that kind of a strategy, I think you could start building out several types of these properties, and then get out of the mainstream affiliate game. And now you're playing a game that it's your own rules, because it's a market that you are in. You control the whole market. You're solving this one problem when other people aren't.
I love it. That brings up lots of thoughts and questions for me. Are you willing to share what your small SaaS ideas are? That you say you got a couple, or are you going to save that till you actually launch those?
I can tell you. So one is actually from my law days. I was actually talking to a lawyer that I know, and he was talking about a brand new form that is a real pain in the ass to fill out. It sucks. And he's like, wouldn't it be great if we could just input this information into one spot and then just click and it would print out the form? And I was like, well, I can do that. So, it's a glorified form fill. But we're going to launch it. And I think because it's law and lawyers will pay a little bit more, I think we can do $50 a month for this.
Wow.
If 20 lawyers, and it's just in one jurisdiction, if 20 lawyers do it, that's $1,000 a month. And it cost me, we built this whole thing for about $4,000. So that it looks pretty.
Yeah.
That's nothing. If it takes off and 100 lawyers are doing it, that's not a bad income property at all, right? And then that's only one jurisdiction. So the thought is, if this takes off, then we can do different areas and continue to grow it. And then that's in law, it goes state by state. You have to pass an exam, the bar exam, and it goes state by state. And so each state probably has a similar version of this type of form, and we could just expand out to those states that have that.
So to market the product, I mean, you talked about word of mouth, but would you take an SEO approach? I mean, just build out a site and try to rank for keywords that are related to, whatever keyword somebody might be typing in?
Sure. But again, you have to get to that kind of MVP word of mouth thing. So I know lawyers, and then also the lawyer that was like, hey, this idea that we're JVing on it, but he knows at least 100 lawyers, or the concept of getting to that kind of minimum threshold. So that's what we're going to do. And he's set up, they have little like lawyer meetings. He's going to run a few of those to get to that minimum point. At this stage, I don't want to spend any more money out of pocket. The tool needs to sustain itself. So once we get that minimum number of people in and it is a viable thing, that's when I would then start investing in SEO or in PPC. Right. Or those other marketing channels. But the tool has to be self-sufficient. I'm not going to continue to throw money at it unless it can take off on its own. And if it takes off on its own, then that's where the investment comes in.
Right. I love it. I mean, it's just another example, I think, of how you like to think differently. I mean, you're looking at, well, how can I build, a little website to earn some money? A lot of people out there are building affiliate websites. Everybody's doing that. Everybody's writing articles on, the best whatever products that Amazon sells, right? So you're thinking, how can I do this differently to build a small business? And I think that comes back to how you do SEO and how you approach SEO as well. You're trying to take a step back, actually dive in and do some tests and see what actually works instead of, here's what everybody says works. So how do you go about running an SEO test? And maybe how could somebody that's listening run their own SEO test?
It's devilishly simple to run an SEO test, but you run into a lot of issues. But the easiest way to do it is you create 5 identical pages. They're exactly the same. They're on the same domain. You get them to index, and you optimize them for a fake keyword, a keyword that does not exist in Google's index. And I don't know if you've ever typed something into Google and it says, we did not find any records that match this. Mm-hmm. That's where the sidewalk ends. Google doesn't have that term, so that if you optimize pages for that term, you control the entire environment, is the idea. Mm-hmm. So then index 5 pages, they're all in Google's index, and then change one thing on one page. Typically, I'll choose the one that is indexed into the number 3 spot. Change one thing on that page, and then if the page moves up, you have found a positive factor. If it moves down, you found a negative factor, and if it doesn't move, then it's a non-factor. That's the easiest way to do it. Where things run into problems is you need a test to be repeatable. So you need to run that test 3 to 5 times. You need to get the same result. And then when you feel good about that, where it gets a little more complex is you need to run the test in the inverse. So you should get the opposite result if you tweak 1, 2, 4, and 5 and leave 3 the same. You should get the opposite result of what you got. But once you've done that, then you feel really good that you have found a ranking factor. And it's a moment in your life where you're going to feel like you just created fire. You just invented it, and you now know something about Google that nobody else knows. It's an empowering feeling, and you can then speak from a position of authority because you didn't read a blog in Moz. You actually witnessed it happen. You created it, and now you know that is or is not a ranking factor.
So over the years, you've run a number of SEO tests. What are some SEO myths, or what were some big aha things for you on some of the tests that you've run, maybe myths that you have proven wrong?
The thing that I'm making the most hay out of continually is that Google cannot read. Google is not a human being. We want to think of Google. I mean, it's so powerful and it's so amazing, right? It's perhaps the most powerful thing ever invented, but it is not a human being. It's an algorithm.
Right.
And we want to, because it's so powerful, we want to give it human qualities. We want to say that it is, because it's perhaps smarter than our combined knowledge, we want to then think that it's also a human being and that it would read and understand things the same way that we would, and it simply does not. So one of the interesting things is that grammar is not a ranking factor. Spelling is not a ranking factor. Reading level, the Flesch-Kincaid scale or whichever scale you like, those are not ranking factors. And it seems counterintuitive to a lot of people when they think, well, this is the smartest thing that's ever been. How can it not see that this content is good content? It's clearly better content than what's there. And it's because Google isn't reading it. It's reading it the way an algorithm would read. And it's looking for math. It's looking for things that it can identify, objects that it knows, and it's putting them into little buckets and then scoring things that way. It's not actually sitting down like, oh, this is much better content than that content. I should rank this one. It can't value judge content. It can only score it based on a way that an algorithm can score it. And so that has been one of the, and continues to be one of the groundbreaking things. I have to reintroduce this concept to people constantly that Google can't read. And so when you want to write your content, it doesn't matter if you just wrote Chaucer compared to somebody's, Calvin and Hobbes, but Google doesn't care. It doesn't care that your content is vastly superior because it can only look at it the way that an algorithm can look at it. And if somebody else's content satisfies the algorithm better, they will win. And it doesn't matter what their site looks like. It doesn't matter how many grammar errors they have or how atrocious their spelling is. They will beat it because they have satisfied the algorithm. And that's the whole point. That's what it really comes down to. And so good content is content. Obviously, you need to convert, but and get users to enjoy it. But really what it comes down to is good content is that satisfies the algorithm.
So follow-up questions here. How do we determine how the content or what part of the content is fulfilling the algorithm? I mean, are we talking about number of keywords used, related keywords, et cetera? Like, so what is important if, good grammar and all these other things that you mentioned are not important?
There are very specific signal areas that Google looks at. The meta title, your H1, those are the two biggest. And then paragraph content. But then even down to old school spam of bold and italic. Those things are counted. And really what it comes down to is that the secret is hiding in plain sight. Google is showing you the sites that it likes. And keep in mind that it didn't like them because it's a popularity contest or a beauty contest. It likes them because these are what its algorithm wants. So you can go into each of those specific signal areas and count how many times they have used the target keyword. You can count how many times they have used variations of that keyword. You can count how many times they've used contextual terms, LSI if you like that term. You can count that. And then you can actually put it in and give Google the site that it wants. You can find the range that Google is rewarding for each of those signal areas, give that to the algorithm, and then you will rank very well.
And so is this essentially what you discovered and why you created Page Optimizer Pro?
I mean, that's what we were doing internally when I was running these tests, and I realized we can just count these areas. And we actually had spreadsheets for a couple of years where we literally just sat down and counted. And we'd look at the top 10 results and we would actually just count it. And then we're like, God, this is awful. There's got to be a better. It's the Shark Tank pitch. We knew there had to be a better way. Mm-hmm. And so we got into Python, wrote a script for this, and then we were doing it internally. And then I casually showed it to a couple of SEOs that were agency people, and I was like, "Do you find this valuable?" Because I was like, "We're kind of crushing it with this, but I don't know. Would other people be able to use this?" And it was like, "Please give that to me." And that's where Pop kind of came out of. And we ran Pop for 8 months or so for free, where it was on the back end of our agency site where you could just kind of put in some information and we would actually email you a report. And then we started taking $1 per report when we kind of launched as a standalone site. And now we're kind of into a subscription model from there. But yeah, the whole basis of it is that you can look and evaluate. I mean, you don't need Pop. You don't need any tool. You can actually count these things. But what Pop does is that it actually does the counting for you and then makes suggestions on, okay, these are what the numbers look like from what Google likes. This is what your site is. You can add or subtract from here.
Yeah. And can you explain anything else that Page Optimizer Pro does? So it obviously, it's sort of, I assume you kind of punch in a keyword that you're trying to rank for, and it pulls in the top 10 results and pulls back the keywords there, or how many times they're mentioning the specific keyword variations, LSI terms, etc. And what else does it tell you?
Those are the big things. But then we also we are tapping into Google's Nlp API now. That's the only API that we have. Everything inside Pop is internal, but we do pull that in so you can actually see entities and content classifications. So the idea is that you can look at the top 10 results and they are classified, or actually not, you can choose your competitors if you want. I would recommend the top 10, but you can put in any competitor you like. So you could actually do a 1-to-1. This competitor is kicking my ass. What are they doing? You could actually just put them in and then get all their data. But we pull on the entities. So how Google's classified the content and what the entities are. Entities are things, person, place, object, and in Google's case, events that Google can identify. We also pull in the page structure. And this is, if you're starting a page from scratch, this is actually how I do my SEO is I look at what kind of page Google wants. And you can see that from the pages that it's rewarding. And so we look at things like, how many images do we need on here? Oh, we need 5-ish. So then I'll start to place 5 on a page. How many H2s do we need? Well, they're averaging about 5 to 7. Okay. So I need about 5 to 7 sections on this page with these So I start to outline a page based on the structure, and then you end up with a page that Google likes, but then you also end up with a page that humans like, because this isn't usually the first time that somebody's done that search. They're looking for a particular type of page, and you don't want to try to teach Google or humans what the best page is. You want to give them what they're expecting. And so you can build a page around, or outline a page around elements, around things that then would create a good structure. We also just launched a MEDIC or EAT evaluation. So we've got around 70 data points of what might make a site trustworthy, things that an algorithm can identify. That's been my funnest point on, again, Google can't read. Google can't look at Dr. Axe, which famously got slapped, right?
Right.
That is a very beautiful man. And that is a great looking stock photo. I don't know if that's a real person. How can an algorithm know if that's a real guy? You can read the site and be like, oh, this is pretty legit. But it's because you're reading like a human. An algorithm can't do that. It sees an image, and it sees text. It needs to know who owns this site. Go to Dr. Axe and tell me who owns the site. You don't know. I promise, because I've done the look, but please, after go and take a look. Who owns it? If you have a problem with the advice that you followed, where do you go? Who can you contact? They have a form, like a contact us, fill out form, and one email address. There's no difference between that site and a horribly put together affiliate site. And so there are data points on sites that an algorithm can look for to find, is this an actual site? Is this a trustworthy business? Put Dr. Axe into factual, which is a data aggregator, and it doesn't come up with any data. That's a bad sign. So within Pop, what we did is we identified these data points of things that an algorithm can find that would make the site trustworthy. And then you can actually look and see how you compare against your competitors. I think this is important in the affiliate space, because really you want to make sure that Google thinks that you're an actual site, that you're an actual company that is that if somebody has a problem, that they can actually then contact you if something goes wrong, or how can they get a refund, or the wrong product was shipped. Those kind of things that always come up. They want to make sure that the sites that they're putting into search results can solve those problems. They're in a position to do so. It's not a fly-by-night company that won't do that.
Right.
So there are things then that you can go through to look to see, like, am I a real site? Will Google think I'm a real site? And then we put that into Pop as a test that you can do, or a check that you can do to make sure that within your niche that you're hitting the same trustworthy points that your competitors are, the ones that are ranking.
Mm-hmm. So when you work with most client sites, do most of them have a bigger on-page problem, or an off-page problem, link building related problem when you look at those?
I think that's a great question. Honestly, everyone's on page is terrible. Like, it is awful because they wrote it like this is the best content. Well, I'm sure that it is. I'm surprised that Pulitzer hasn't contacted you at this point, but Google won't care. Unless you're hitting the points that Google wants to see, it does not matter how great that content is. There's also a supreme lack of proper internal linking on most sites. What most people do is they write one page of what they consider great content, and they send it off into the universe, and then they ponder for a minute why it's not ranking. And then I think their next thought is, let's write a blog post. And they'll write a blog post, and it'll be an amazing post, right? But who cares? And it's not even linking back to the target page.
Right.
What are you doing? You're hoping and praying that Google likes this target page for some reason, and then gives you bonus points for a blog post that you wrote. Well, how could Google possibly make the connection? I mean, yeah, they're both on the same domain, but what's the connection between these two? And for some reason, a lot of them don't even think to link between them. So on-page and internal linking is always a problem. You always hear the I've done everything. I've done everything, and it's not working. And then I'm sure you as an expert look at it and you're like, you've done nothing. You haven't even scratched the surface of foundational yet. But maybe I don't. I've actually been. I think this is what my talk is going to be about in 2020. As I go through it. I've done everything, but they haven't. Right. And then I'm wondering, is it because they don't want to, or is it because they don't know? Is it because they don't know what to look for? I think might be the bigger issue, or the things, and it comes with experience. It comes with study. I think it comes with testing. You have to know what to look for foundationally in order to be able to see a problem. And if you don't have that knowledge, or you don't know what to look for, you're never going to see it. So that's kind of what I'm playing with as a top concept.
Yeah, I think maybe I think it's a little bit of both in terms of, I've done everything that they either are, some people maybe don't know, but I think a lot of people know that still don't do it, simply because they feel like they've got the big stuff done, right? Like they did the keyword research, they wrote the article, they got the images, they got it, all with their affiliate links. It's a ton of work to get a great looking, article up. And then they kind of go, phew, I'm done. Let's move on to the next one. Right. And then specifically with like internal linking, they just either forget about it. I think they probably know, but it's not the big stuff. Right. It's a little thing that they'll get to at some point. That's maybe the sense that I get.
Yeah. It's the grind that you have to do. And the grind isn't sexy.
Yep.
Getting the article up is sexy.
Yep. And,
I can see that.
Internal linking is a big part of what I'm doing right now. I actually don't know if you know, but I just launched an internal linking WordPress plugin called Link Whisper a few months ago. And awesome. You can check it out later, but it helps speed up the process of doing internal linking. And so I'm always curious to hear about thoughts on internal linking and the importance of it. Do you have a specific approach? Do you try to keep a silo structure, these articles in one specific category, only link, within that category? Or are you more of the opinion that, hey, if it's relevant across the site, just internally link to it, it's important?
Man, these are softballs. I love this interview.
That's what I do best.
It's great. For those listening, we did not coordinate any of this. Have you been in those interviews where it's just tedious to get answers and questions out, whether you're on either side of it?
Sure.
It's just the worst. Just the worst. No, this is great. So this is actually something that I teach. Good. It is a virtual silo structure. And the concept is you can have a lot of pages on your site and they can link here or there, and that's fine. But when you have a target page, and by a target page, I mean something you want to show up in Google, you want this page to rank for this keyword and its friends. You need to have pages that you have consciously chosen to support that target page. it has to be an intention. It's not wishful thinking. It's not random internal linking. It's, okay, these 3 to 5 or whatever the number might be, are there to support this target page. That forms the basis of your silo. And the idea is that those pages that you have consciously said, these are my silo pages, they will only link to each other. And I don't daisy chain them, but I link them kind of like an ABCD sort of thing where they link back and forth to each other, almost like a next and previous, but done intentionally in the body content. And then they all link to the target page. And they don't link to any other target page because I'm building them with the idea that they support that one page. And so what's nice about doing a virtual silo is that it doesn't matter where they live on the site. They could be in any blog category. They could be pages, they could be posts. It does not matter. I'm linking them within the body content and specifically targeting one target page. And these silo posts support that page. So from a human perspective, these are just regular pages on the site. So it does not matter. But from Google's perspective, I now have these targeted pages that are now internally linking to, or these silo pages linking to my target page. And then what I like to do is those silo pages are often things based on that I know that I can get links to. So things that are shareable, things that people might actually want to link, because if your target page is a page where you're selling a product or a service, nobody will link to that.
Right.
Why would they? Why would they link to they'll tell you to pound sand. But if you wrote good content, for lack of a better phrase, about it, like how-tos or things to avoid or tips on this or a cool infographic or a video series, whatever is easy for you to, people will link to that. They will actually share that can actually get organic links, but it's also the kind of thing that you could use as part of an outreach. And if you've then remember that piece is only only supporting one target page, the links that you get in and the internal linking that you've specifically done will then pass the juice up to where you need it to go. So that's how I handle my internal linking, is through very intentional, very conscious, very specific pages that I'm going to use to link to each other and then to my target page only. And then I like to do it where it's not just willy nilly. It's a page that could actually get links to it because it's something that people want to link to. It answers a good question. You can go to the People Also Ask or niche forums and just answer that question. It'll also rank on its own usually if you do that. There's some long tail question where you only need to put it in the meta title in the H1. It'll rank and just answer it. And then all of a sudden you're getting traffic into your silo because people search, they look for that question, they click on your thing, and then all of a sudden now you're getting traffic. And then if you've properly linked, now they're going up to your target page because hey, check this out. This is the thing that solves that problem. So, don't fake it, but be intentional is kind of how I handle it. And then if you actually do real content to support that target page, all the better. You actually end up with an effective SEO strategy, an effective marketing strategy.
Right. So the one question you brought up that I think you answered, but maybe you can clarify, is that the reason that you don't link out from those silo pages to any other pages, specifically you're only linking to your main, target page, target keyword there, is really just so that all of the link juice flows to that page. You could internally link to some other, page outside of that silo. It just would dilute the SEO juice a little bit, right?
That's exactly right. And it's not your entire site. It's not your entire blog catalog. I'm talking, I do them in sets of 3 because that's manageable.
Right.
When you're putting that together, but pick 3 pages. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have them yet, then those are the 3 that you're writing. That's your task for this month, is to write 3 pages, but it's possible they already exist on your site. More often than not, they do. Throw them into like something like Ahrefs and find your blog posts that have accidentally gotten links. And then that's a power page for you, and you can instantly pass juice to a target page.
Right.
But it doesn't have to move. It's a concept that I think a lot of people miss, is that by placing that link in the body, you have created a virtual silo, so it can still live where it lives. But you've moved it virtually into a silo by reworking how the internal link structure works within the body.
Right. That makes perfect sense. So are there any SEO tests that you're doing right now? Do you have any sort of live tests that you're trying to learn and determine what works?
I've recently started a series on images. James Dooley, I don't know if you know him.
A little bit familiar, yeah.
He was like, you know what? Nobody's doing any work on images. And I was like, yeah, who cares? But he was talking about that, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of industries where images get a lot of searches and a lot of clicks. And he's like, how can we show up better in image search? And I was like, oh, that's a great question. I had not thought of that. So I've started doing some image search type things. I have 2 that I'm about to publish. And honestly, my mind went blank on what I'm about to publish. That's not good.
That's all right.
I started taking some nootropics and maybe they're working the other way.
Maybe so. Yeah, but it sounds like you're constantly testing and learning. Is that part of your agency? Are you guys always just sort of thinking about what are some additional things that we could be testing out and helping clients with?
Oh, that's exactly. Oh, you know what? That's actually a great point was, so a lot of tests that we get to actually come from a client question. There's no point in having opinion about something, like if it's testable, and really anything is testable if you think about it the right way. I think one of the reasons that people don't like tests is because they can't imagine how to test it. And really that's just a lack of imagination, not that something is not testable. So depth into your site, how many folders deep should you go? And does that matter? And so a fun test, and actually I put this up and you can see it for free in Internet Marketing Gold, which is a group that Ted Kubitis and I, and also my business partner Andy, started. But the idea is, all right, if I have .com / say category, then / page that I want to rank, will that do better than .com / category / subcategory / page? So the idea is like, how deep can you go to, does Google care? Mm-hmm. And what was a lot of fun is launching 2 identical pages and then watching it where the one that was closer to the .com indexed immediately. The one that was 1 folder deep took almost 48 hours more to index. And then the one that is closer to the .com always beats the deeper one, always. Again, we're talking about running a test multiple times. This is a little bit of a trickier test because you're only launching 2 things, so you have other variables that come into play. So you have to run it multiple times, and you scatter plot it is kind of how you want to do it, but scatter plot the results. But the one that is closer to the .com will always win. It's very interesting. You can launch the deeper one first. You wait a day, launch the second one, or launch the one closer to .com. It will index before and will win. So Google doesn't want to crawl deep into sites. But this test concept came from, hey, we're doing the site redesign. Our web design guy wants to do this, and we saw these URLs that were massive. And it's like, no, that's an awful idea. You don't want to go that deep.
Right.
You don't want to take a page that's ranking and put it that deep. And he said, well, it doesn't matter because of internal linking. And I was like, no, I don't think that's how that works. And so you can run those tests. And so, when people get in flame wars on Facebook, which is cancer, by the way.
Yes.
And they want to argue about things in SEO. I'm always like, why argue about it? Why not put your heads together and run a test on it and see?
Absolutely.
Let's take a look. But it might take a little time. Tests take time, and we're talking weeks or months. But you can sit down and be like, let's sort this one out, rather than argue about something that doesn't need to be opinion based. It can be fact based. It can be, in the worst case, you can do a case study. And there's a lot that you can poke holes in a case study about, but still at the end of the day, you've got something to look at.
Right.
So that's where a lot of the tests come from, are actual practical things. Should we do this or that? Well, let's run a test and figure it out.
Yeah, and that's what I love, is that you're willing to dive in, and when a client has a problem or you have a question, you just are running a test to figure out what the right answer is and actually base decisions on data rather than speculation. And I think that's super important, especially for people building out their own sites. I mean, they can certainly learn from you and from others that have done tests, but if they have a question on their own, you've explained, I think pretty well how people can kind of set up their own tests and run an experiment on their own. So
one thing I would note is don't experiment on a site that you love, by the way.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. Definitely. Yes.
Things go horribly, horribly wrong, burn down something else. But, when people are doing affiliate sites, I would always think that wouldn't it be a good idea to run 2 affiliate sites? One that's kind of like your tester, and the other one that's your baby and that's what you love. So that you can run the tester, and like when people say like, oh, this is a new technique or a new thing, do it on the tester. Yeah. And if it burns it down, well, then it burned it down. But you didn't harm the thing that you love the most. It feels like I think a lot of people run one site without that backup way to figure out, and then they're just running tests on that site, right? When they see a new technique or they see something new, they're just doing it on that one site. Why not have 2?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Run a small one on the side so that you can do these techniques. Like some things sound like great techniques and it would be worth doing, or split testing A or B, or running different offers, or, testing out an email campaign, or testing out split testing PPC or Facebook ads or something like that. Do it on the tester, see what works cheaply before bringing it to the one that's actually giving you revenue.
Right. Have your own sandbox that you can test out and see what works and see what doesn't. Absolutely. So, Kyle, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. You've shared a ton of information. I think a lot of tips that people can take and apply to their own sites as well. If people want to follow along with what you're doing, where would you like to send them?
Come over to internetmarketing.gold. It's a site that we've launched, and it's really just a place for answers. You can come in and post questions and get things answered. Really is what it comes down to. And it's based around the tests that I do and the tests that Ted Kubaitis does. And there's a premium section if you want to look at the test, but if not, there's so much in the free area that I think and we just relaunched this week too. So it's a brand new thing you can join in. And honestly, I think you'll just learn about SEO. You'll learn about digital marketing.
Excellent. Yeah, people can go to internetmarketing.gold if they want to follow along with Kyle. Once again, thanks for coming on the podcast, Kyle.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you once again for listening to the Niche Pursuits podcast. As a reminder, this episode has been sponsored by Ezoic. Ezoic is a Google award-winning technology that everyone from niche website owners to major brands use to grow and monetize their websites. Ezoic is a Google certified publishing partner. It's a platform that leverages artificial intelligence to help you optimize revenue and monetization on a per visitor basis, and so much more. If you want to check out Ezoic, go to nichepursuits.com/Ezoic. Again, that's nichepursuits.com/Ezoic. Thanks a lot.